Rapid pace out here early in the second. LeVert, hey, knocks it down. Rondo's on the run. Stops, hits Love fires. Cavs reset with a fresh 14. Under 3 to go in the half. Garland works on Holiday. Toss it for a moment, shovels to Mobley. Garland, step back three, drew a foul, knocks it down.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of the All Things Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. This is episode number 31. And unlike Naomi and Sasha Banks, we will not walk out on you. Joey, was that too low?
It wasn't too loud, but I definitely don't know if everyone's going to get that reference.
Instead of the coming here a little bit on, of course, I am Brandon Woods alongside Joey Schneider. We're here for another episode of All Things Cavs.
If anyone did not get that reference, it was a WWE reference. If you have to look it up, go and do that. Guys, we have a lot to talk about today. And by a lot, I mean the NBA draft lottery was last night. The Cleveland Cavaliers had a 2.7% chance, I believe, of getting the number one pick, or a top 4 pick, I should say, in the NBA draft. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are staying at number 14, which is no big surprise there. They had the worst chance, and I'm actually okay with it. This draft is extremely deep, Brandon. Me and you have talked about it. If you guys have not had the opportunity, go to believelandmediallc.com and check out my pre-lottery mock draft. Myself and Joe Yule, who is a host on the Mic Drop podcast. Joe put together a absolutely insane big board that we used, and we mocked together the top 14 teams. Please check that out. We're going to be doing all sorts of draft analysis, mock drafts, big board updates, all the way leading up to the NBA draft. You'll also be hearing the coverage from me and Brandon right here on All Things Cavaliers. But Brandon, me and you have talked a little bit about this, and by a little bit I mean a lot. At number 14, you know my thoughts on this draft class. It is wildly deep. And me and you have actually talked about this off camera a lot. I don't know how much we've talked about it on the podcast, but if you start going back through drafts the last, 8 to 10 years, you start seeing that a lot of drafts are a lot deeper than they used to be, where once in a blue moon, you would get a solid pick in the 20s or in the second round. But like the last 10 years, it seems like you're getting good picks all the way into the 20s and even into the second round. Not just, some stars, some really, some all-stars, some bench players. So this draft class, I mean, I really could, this entire first round, I mean, there's, I think like 17 or 20 players who I think can potentially be not just starters, but really good potential all-star type players. I'm not saying they're all going to be that, because that would be ridiculous, but I think that there's just a insane amount of talent. So with that being said, do you think the Cavs should keep the number 14 pick, draft another young player, or, maybe they could get someone who's a little older? Some of these rookies, played 3 or 4 years, so they're 21, 22 already coming in. Or do you think that they really should try their best to look for a trade that makes sense? And if there's anything out there that can make them better right now?
This is why, Joey, as we know, the NFL and the NBA are obviously two different sports, but their drafts are obviously, a lot of people watch both drafts. I bring up the NFL because the NFL does something different than the NBA that I wish the NBA did. And that is, the NFL has their free agency period before the draft. The NBA has kind of their free agency period after the draft. And I say that because it would make our life a lot easier going into the draft if the Cavs knew specifically what hole they needed to fix on the roster, because they have a lot of question marks, as we have detailed here, as the season winded down, and as obviously the Cavs got eliminated from the playing tournament. We have talked about, really, in my opinion, three key players: Karis LeVert, Lauri Markkanen, and Colin Sexton. Those are three pieces. Now, obviously, Lauri Markkanen is locked into his contract. Colin Sexton is a restricted free agent. Karis LeVert has 1 year left on his contract. But these are three pieces that, hey, if the Cavs knew they couldn't get Sexton back at the price that they wanted, or maybe they get a deal that everybody's happy with, then maybe you could eliminate backup two guard, or just in general two guard, because you have a Coro off the board. If they're not getting the trade that they like for Karis LeVert, they keep him. Maybe they wait till the trade deadline. Again, like, all these questions to me are just that. They're questions. And to be honest with you, it's hard to know for me until you put offers out there. Me and you both the last week have mentioned, and we talked about this, a trade for the Wizards shooting guard Bradley Beal. Well, that only works if you're going to give up the number 14 pick. And in order to give up the number 14 pick, you have to ensure that this is a deal that's not only going to benefit your team for this year, but in the long run as well. And, like you said, this draft is very deep. And going for a player like Bradley Beal, who's 28 years old, he's going to be 29 next season. He's had some health issues in his career. Is it going to be worth, trading that pick? And, you might have to get rid of Colin Sexton more than likely in that deal, because that's probably who they're going to want. I mean, it's a very complicated question, and an answer that, like, I don't know what the Cavs answer until they're sitting at 14 and see what offers they get.
Yeah, well, one of the other things is we have some valuable assets this year. You have Kevin Love, and I know people are like, I don't want to hear about trading Kevin Love. Okay, well, come trade deadline, you might feel differently if the Cavs, maybe the Cavs are in somewhat of the same spot that they're in. They're a borderline team. He's a $30 million contract, and maybe a team's willing to give up something good for him. And that's an expiring contract. Same with Karis LeVert. He's only got 1 year left. Colin Sexton, if you're looking to trade him, he is going to have to be a sign and trade. But and we just talked about this before we came on, and I'm going to say it, right here. I don't know if Bradley Beal, and we both had this in our mock trades last week, but after thinking about it more, I don't know if Bradley Beal is really that much of an upgrade over a healthy Colin Sexton. Bradley Beal's 29 years old. How many years left does he have of playing at the level that he is playing at, especially after all the injuries he's dealt with through his career? Colin Sexton is, I think, 22 or 23. And, obviously he's not, I don't know what him and the Cavs are going to cook up, but if they can find some sort of happy medium between, a deal he likes and a deal that's good for the team, then I would say go for it. But this pick is I don't know. It's really weird, because I think you can find a really good I think you can get a really good player at 14. I mean, like, if I'm, some of these names are probably going to be off the board, but I'm just going to throw some names out there. You don't know how the draft is going to shake out. There's some players we know that are absolutely not going to be there, but someone like AJ Griffin might fall to 14 from Duke. He would be a heck of a pickup. Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. Now, a lot of these guys are projected to go earlier, but you don't know what teams are going to do after maybe the top 6 picks. Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. Dyson Daniels from the G League. A lot of people have Malachi Branham from Ohio State pegged to go to the Cavs. I'm not as high on that as other people, but I mean, do you want to roll the dice? You're talking about Bradley Beal, Ty Washington, who was basically, said people said he's the next Bradley Beal before um something happened and he ended up falling a little bit. But you got Tari Eastman from LSU. I mean, there's a lot of these. One of the guys I really like, Ochai Agbaji from Kansas, a senior. I mean, you could go down the line. I mean, you got I can't even pronounce his first name, but his last name is Jang. He's from France, but he played in New Zealand. Has a huge ceiling. Someone like Kendall Brown from Baylor. I mean, all of these guys have potential, and I mean, they could have all-star potential. But if you're the Cavs coming into this, are you looking for a wing, for a wing that you're going to start? Or are you kind of going this with 14 going, I'm looking for the best bench player I can get?
So here's my answer to that question. We all know the Cavs need a wing. Now, obviously, there are different positions that the Cavs obviously need to upgrade on their bench. Wing upgrade on the bench, possibly. Backup point guard, more than likely. Depending on their view of Moses Brown, probably a backup center. But these are guys that you can add in free agency and later on down the road. I think their number one target in this draft has to be a wing. And I think it needs to be, and again, this is if they keep the pick. I think that they need to look for a guy who can come off the bench right now, because I do think that we anticipate marketing Mobley, Allen will be your 3, 4, 5 next season. But saying that, I don't think this big lineup is going to be together forever. And so I think when I look at it, I'm looking at a guy who at 14, you can get this season, maybe comes off the bench, gets his feet wet. We've seen what player development is in the NBA. We've seen teams be patient with guys before. Milwaukee, obviously, with Giannis. Golden State this year with Jordan Poole. Just to throw a couple names off the top of my head. Just guys waiting for 2 to 3 years to develop. Because I do think if you're going to make this pick, this guy, it may not be this year. It may not even be the year after that. But by year 3, this guy needs to be a starter and a key contributor for a Cavs team that at that time, in my opinion, should be a perennial Eastern Conference contender if we are going up the ladder and getting better baby steps year by year by year. This year we took a jump. Ideally, next year take a little more of a jump, maybe get to the first or second round. The year after that, you are top 3 seed. You are conference finals. And I think this player will be a key. And the key, as I have said all along with this draft, is if they make the pick, you got to get it right. Because it would not be good for the Cavs if they miss an opportunity to trade for somebody, whoever that may be, whether it's a Bradley Beal or another big name superstar, and they decide to keep that pick, and that pick does not work out.
So I'm going to give you, well, let me ask you this question first before I get into that. Would you be against the Cavs moving up to get somebody that they feel could potentially be an all-star? Because we talk about them trading the pick or to another team to try and get someone.
I haven't thought about it, but I really like that idea. Again, it depends, as we have talked about with these trade scenarios. It depends on, well, what piece are you giving up, right? Are you giving up Marketing? Are you giving up Levert? Or are you giving up Sexton? And I go back to those 3 names because I think whatever deal the Cavs make, unless it's a small deal like the one you proposed last week with Cedi Osman, if it's one of these, though, high-profile deals that we're talking about, one of those players is going to have to be in the trade. So it just depends on, well, if they're trading up for a 2, are they getting rid of Levert because they want to keep Martin at the 3? Or or if they're going up for a free, do they get rid of marketing? Like it's a scenario where it's like I would love it, but it depends on the player and it depends on who they give up.
Well, you're not trading up into the top. I don't think that there's a way you're trading up into the maybe the top six. I think those top six players are probably set. There might be a surprise at six. I'm not sure, but I'm saying, I can potentially see them maybe trading to 8. So I don't know what you would have to give up to get to 8. Do you give up 14 this year and first round next year, maybe? I mean, to jump 6 spots, I don't know. Maybe you give up first round and 14 and a Coro.
If we give up 2 picks and no players and move up, if that scenario, that is a win in my book.
So and the reason I say this is because there's a couple of players I like. I think you could probably stand pat at 14 and have a chance to get Joe Yule's favorite player for the Cavs. He's one of the top players for me too, and that's Ochai Agbaji from Kansas.
Yep, and I agree. And so I assumed, because I am looking at your guys' mock draft right now on the screen, you guys have him going to 9 to the Spurs. So
our draft was it wasn't based on best player as much as it was based on it. I mean, it was based on best player, but it was also based on team needs and also the players fit with that coach and the franchise. Gotcha. And that's why we had AJ Griffin falling to the Cavs. I love AJ Griffin. He's 6'6". He's got a 7-foot wingspan. His problem is he needs to be more consistent on defense. And in high school, he was an explosive athlete. He could get to the rim at will. But in college, he had a little bit of trouble getting off of better defenders. He lost a little bit of that explosiveness, and he needs to work on it. But in the place of that explosiveness, he shot 45% from 3. So if you look at a player like AJ Griffin, at worst, he's going to shoot the lights out from 3, and at best, he might be one of the best players in the draft. I like Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. He's he's in the same vein as AJ Griffin, but he's better on defense, but really explosive athlete. Can get to the rim as a great jumper. I mean, there's so many good athletes. And there are so many good prospects in this draft. So for the Cavs, I like Agbaji, I like Griffin, I like Mathurin, I like Tari Eason from LSU, who is just a relentless player. Listen to this: had a 4.5% steal ratio last year and a 6.1% block ratio. He averaged over 2 steals per game last season. He needs to work a little bit on his offensive game, but his defense is absolutely out of this world. He still averaged, I think, I want to say like 14 points per game. But on top of that, he was one of if not the best transitional players in college last year. Like when he got out and ran, it meant 2 points. And what do the Cavs like to do?
Get out and run.
They like to get out and run. And on top of that, he is a great combo forward defender. He can guard the wing. He can also guard power forward. He's 6'8". He's got, I think, an 11-foot wingspan. So he doesn't have crazy long arms, but he's crazy athletic. He does play a lot longer than that though. And it's, there's a lot of players in this draft that I'm like, man, they could really be something in this league. So, and that's why you're like, do you stay at 14 or do you try and move up to get someone, or do you trade the pick and roll with what you have, try to bring someone else in? That's just
that's why I said I wish that they did free agency period before the draft, so we would have a little bit more clarity as to what the roster would look like. We would know, if Sexton is back. We wouldn't know necessarily, I guess, if LeVert was back, or not, because they could still trade him during the draft period. But I think just when it comes to like how the league moves, because free agency changes so much, as we know, right? And so when you look at this draft, I have not looked at the free agency class this year, but I bet you general managers have, and I bet you some teams are thinking, well, okay, for example, let's say AJ Griffin is there. Well, we may try to get, for example, the big small fit, small forward, whoever that may be in free agency. We may not want to try to go draft, forward. We may want to try to go hit a home run. So it may play advantage or disadvantage to the Cavs, which is why I think Kobe Altman is in a real difficult spot. I think the good news is for the Cavs is, as you mentioned, at 14, they're going to have a lot of options. And I think I think options are good, because I do think that the decision will be made here by draft night once they kind of fit, once the weeks start coming out, now that the lottery is done, now that people kind of know how the top 5 at least is going to fall. I think that then they can kind of figure out, okay, and I'm sure that they're testing the waters right now as the playoffs come to an end. Hey, what would you do for this deal? I'm sure they're already trying to talk to Colin Sexton's, agent about this deal. And one of the other factors too that we have not brought up yet, when you're talking about a trade, if they were going to trade for a big time superstar that's worth a lot of money, they still got to pay Darius Garland, who reports are saying he's looking for a max contract. And that is something the Cavs are going to have to take into account. Okoro is going to be up here for, I think, a little bit more money in the next couple of years. Same thing with Mobley down the line.
But yeah, I mean, you got you got Mobley 4 years from now. You don't got to worry about Mobley right now. Darius Garland, you're going to have to worry about. I want to say, is it next year?
I want to say it's next year.
Okoro is probably he's definitely not getting. I mean, I'd be surprised if he continues to get what he's getting now, which I think is like $6 million. I would be shocked if Okoro is not part of a deal at some point. I love Isaac Okoro, unless his offensive game has really evolved or really evolves from last year to this year. One of the best defenders in the league, I think, but I think his offense really hurt us last year.
I do think if they stay at 14, like, I think that's it for the kids. I think the Cavs have enough kids. I think it's now, like you said, if they stay and they develop together, fine. But I think at this point, like, if Sexton stays and you have Garland, Sexton, Okoro, this draft pick, Allen is still young, Mobley, well, you have enough young pieces. Now it's time to go and find good, solid, decent veterans to fill out this roster, because I think the Cavs are really young, and that is one thing that scares me, that I don't think we have enough veterans on the team right now, because I think it's going to take time for these kids to gel. But at some point, you got to rip the band-aids off of these kids, because let's face it, Garland is still big. I mean, Garland's only in his, third or fourth year in the league. He's still, he's growing up. I mean, these guys, him, Okoro, they barely were able to earn a drink. I mean, people forget it's not the NFL. These guys come in at 23, 24 years old. These guys are coming in at 18 years old. But I think I'm now to like, okay, guys, we've been in this role. We just took a jump last year. Like, let's go. Now's our time to strike. And it just depends on what that next move will be, if they can pull off a big move or not.
So the last thing I want to say about the draft for this episode is, I think this is actually kind of the last draft that you have that you're going to have that opportunity. And the reason is because you have Karis LeVert, you have Okoro, that this pick can sit behind and watch, that this pick can come off of the bench, that, maybe if someone gets hurt, they could, he would be able to start. But you have one more year of Karis LeVert, you have another year so you have a year for this player to develop. You're not throwing them to the wolves right away. And that would be why I'm a little more high on maybe potentially trading up. And I do want to do this. Brandon, how do you feel about this? Guys, go to the All Things Cavaliers Twitter page. We're gonna have a poll up today. It's going to be, what would you do with the number 14 pick? trade up, keep it, trade back, or try and trade it for a player. That, to me, those are 4 all viable options, and I kind of want to know what you guys would do with it.
I don't know what trading back is a viable option.
I don't, unless someone gave us a role player and we traded back to maybe like 19, like Brandon. I mean, I'm dead, being 100% honest. I mean, there's guys, like I said, there's guys going all the way into the second round that have all-star potential.
In order to trade back, we have to get a good player in return. And
does it have to be a really good player? Like, what if someone says, we'll give you, I don't know, I can't think of it on the top of my head, but like, we'll give you a backup point. Like, we get a solid backup point guard and we drop 5 picks.
That's okay. But again, It has to be a solid player that will contribute. The last thing I'll throw out here before we move on to playoff talk is it possible, because you mentioned this kid is going to be able to sit behind, we think Levert's probably going to be on the team, Okoro, but is it possible, does this kid just take over the Jetty Osman role? I mean, do they basically decide to cut bait with Jetty and they just throw this kid in there with Jetty Osman and play off the bench and be kind of the igniter?
I mean, potentially, but I mean, you would have to get rid of Jetty. I mean, and that's probably one of the biggest problems is how,
I have said this, but I have said from the day that we came, I said I think that they are done with Jetty Osman. And he didn't even play in the last game. He was basically benched at the end of the year.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're gonna be paying a guy $8 million to sit at the end of the bench. I mean, so unless you can trade him and you have to package him with someone and trade him, I don't know how much value there is. I mean, he can be really good off the bench, and we saw that this year. He had games where we were like, Chetty Osman deserved it.
But again, why was he not like that? Why? Like, he can be, but why? 2 and 2 does not equal 4 in that situation.
I mean, 2 and 2 always equals 4. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why Chetty was doing great and started sucking eggs. I don't know. But it's something that they're gonna have to address this offseason, obviously. And maybe we do see a trade. Maybe we do see Markkanen and Osman go somewhere, and we get someone, maybe a player similar back in return. Who knows? We'll see.
Speaking of addressing, Phoenix Suns got some addressing to do.
Woo!
Let's move on. Let's talk some NBA playoffs. Ladies and gentlemen, the Phoenix Suns just got destroyed in Game 7.
They got destroyed by Luka Legend, baby.
By not only Luka Legend, but Spencer Dinwiddie, who at the trade deadline we both looked at and said, Kristaps Porzingis for Spencer Dinwiddie? What? Spencer Dinwiddie didn't show for 6 games of that series, came in Game 7, played huge bucket to just extend that lead for Dallas.
Jalen Brunson, 28 points.
Jalen Brunson, amazing. Dallas, great performance. I'm gonna throw something wild out there. You guys know me. You guys know I am a very hot take person. You guys know I bring all the hot, extraordinary, wild takes in this podcast. Joey needs to calm me down sometimes.
Number 14 for Devin Booker.
No, not Phoenix, man. If I'm Phoenix, DeAndre Ayton, you're gone. I am bringing back DeAndre Ayton. He does not have that dog in him.
He's still young.
You need guys in the playoffs that will show up in the game and the moment. And that was a sad excuse of a performance. We saw it last year too in the NBA Finals.
Well, what are you going to tell me? Do you have excuses for Devin Booker then? Because he was worse.
Devin Booker was terrible, and he's always been a guy who everybody anointed superstar, when he was only winning 30 games a year until Chris Paul showed up. Devin Booker's another one of those guys that's just a score on a bad team and got elevated by Chris Paul, and the real Devin Booker showed up Sunday night in Phoenix. That's who Devin Booker is. He's not a superstar, and he will shrink in the biggest moments.
Let me throw a trade out there for you. 14 Chetty Osman for Mikal Bridges.
Done.
They get the 14th pick, a good player to bring in. They get Osman to come off the bench. We get Bridges. Boom. Let's do it.
Done. Boom. But yeah, Phoenix has a lot to address. Congratulations to Dallas. They're moving on. Western Conference Finals tonight, Game 1. Luka Doncic against Golden State. I do think, and as much as I love Luka Doncic, I do think Golden State's got a lot of bodies to throw at him. And we have talked about the chemistry thing. And I said, I don't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago on the podcast, Golden State has the best chemistry in the playoffs. They went to 5 straight NBA Finals together. They have been there, done that. And I am here today to make a prediction about the NBA Finals.
You want to say it for the end, or you want to do it right now?
No, I will do it right now.
Oh God!
You can play this take back. If I'm wrong, you can tweet at me at @BrandonWoods_7. You can say whatever you want. This NBA Finals will be the NBA Finals. Steph Curry wins his first Finals MVP.
Whew. I really want Dallas to go to the finals because I love Luka Doncic. However, who in their mind would have thought Klay Thompson gets hurt last year? One of the worst injuries you could possibly get. Steph Curry gets hurt. Draymond is just kind of doing Draymond things, whatever. And then all of a sudden, Durant's gone. They had a couple of draft picks. Jonathan Kuminga's been serviceable. I don't even know who their other pick was.
Wiseman.
No, I mean he's been. Yeah, that was the year before. They had 2 picks last year. They had the Kuminga and someone else. I can't remember who. Wiseman's been a bust so far. Who would have thought Jordan Poole,
not me,
would become maybe even their second best player on the team? I mean, right now, he's still putting up almost triple-double numbers.
Yeah.
And that's with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green on the court. I mean, that is unbelievable. This team they just reload. I agree with you. I think that I don't want to say it, but I think Golden State goes back to the finals. You know what? I'm not going to crown them champs just yet because I think, man, are the Miami Heat good? Man, are they tough? They are a tough team. Jimmy Butler is a playoff. He is a playoff hero.
Jimmy Butler is that guy. Devin Booker is not.
Yes.
A dog.
He is Devin Booker puts up 50-point games during the regular season. Jimmy Buckets puts up 50-point games in the playoffs when it counts. I mean, I told you all year I was scared of Miami.
You were right, and I'm still doubting Miami. I've been doubting Miami all year long. I don't know how you. Every time I look up, they're down 15, and I look back up again, and they're up 10. They're a really good team, but
they are.
Something just told me, when you look at these rosters, and we have talked about this, you look at the roster of Dallas. Who the hell do they have outside of Luka? Nobody, and they took apart Phoenix in Game 7. What is going on?
That Spencer Dinwiddie trade looks really freaking good right now.
It was good because Dinwiddie showed up in Game 7, and I will give him his credit because in the moment, and this is what I have preached forever since I've started talking. You need guys there is a difference between the regular season and the playoffs, and guys will show you who they really are in the brightest moment on the biggest stage. Now they can overcome that eventually. Some do, some don't. But until then, you got to take, and Luka Doncic. I mean, in two previous Game 7s, Kawhi Leonard took him and locked him up against the Clippers. This Game 7, let me just score as much as the whole Phoenix Suns team did at halftime.
Like, Devin Booker tried to get in his head, and Luka Doncic was like, "You're not that guy, bro. You're not that guy." Devin Booker got in his face, talked some trash, and Luka Doncic took it to heart and took Devin Booker to the woodshed, and Devin Booker deserved it. You don't poke the bear. You could you could talk trash when the series is over.
Man, just incredible. And I mean Boston. I mean that Game 7, that was a close knit game in the first half. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who I told you at the trade deadline, you were all in on the couch trying to get Jaylen Brown. And I said, Jaylen Brown, I haven't really seen him in the big spot and big moment yet. I'm not sure how much of an upgrade he'd be. Man, did I wish the Cavs would have pulled off that deal at the trade deadline, because once again, Jaylen Brown showed up when it mattered. And both Boston and Miami, I'll give them this. They're both very tough. They're both very deep. They're two great, and actually all four of these teams, all four of these teams in the NBA that are left have championships. They're very well-known brands in the NBA. Of course, Phoenix, Dallas, not Phoenix, Golden State, Dallas, Boston, Miami, four great brands in the NBA. Just absolutely incredible. You can see the toughness. Whoever makes it out of the East, not saying whoever makes it out of the West isn't going to deserve it, but whoever makes it out of the East is absolutely going to deserve it, because those have been some physical wear and tear series, especially for Boston after what they went through with Milwaukee, when I swear to God, on every possession, somebody hit the floor.
Mm-hmm. Let me end it by saying this, Brandon. What do all four of these teams have in common?
I would say great coaching and great depth. Those are the two things.
You're wrong. What do all four of these key teams have in common?
Besides the fact that they've won a championship.
What does each team have on its own? We talked about this last week.
A guy that can just go get buckets.
Good Lord. All four teams have incredible chemistry.
Does Dallas, though?
Yes.
Seriously, does Dallas have chemistry?
Yes, because how many games this season did Doncic maybe not have his best game, but he had Jalen Brunson step up and have a big game, or had Maxi Kleber, who comes out of nowhere and has a big game. These guys lift each other up. That's great chemistry. And that's what every single one of these teams have. Yes, they have stars. We have established you can have chemistry without good players. Doesn't mean you're going to win a lot of games. But if you have if you have great chemistry with some good players, you're going to make it to the finals. Golden State proved that they had all the talent in the world, and they got Kevin Durant, and they won champions. But they won champions before Kevin Durant because they had good chemistry. You have the Mavericks, who when someone's down, someone else is willing to step up into that role because they have good chemistry. The Celtics, who good chemistry, and it took them a while to get there. For a while we were talking about, should they break up Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and then they finally figured it out. Good chemistry. The Heat, who I told you I was scared of all year. Good chemistry. This is what we were talking about last week on our podcast. The better the chemistry, the better chance you have of winning.
Yeah,
right now, all four of these teams have good chemistry.
Yeah, if the Heat make the finals, someone, it might even be you, might have to make a clip of rolling back all the times I said Miami stinks on this podcast.
If the Heat go to the finals, I am probably gonna punch you in the face.
Because right now it doesn't look very good for me. But we'll see. It is a long series. Boston did, Boston wins in a long Game 7 fight. We'll see. I mean, Boston didn't even have Marcus Smart or Al Horford. Obviously, Miami doesn't have Kyle Lowry. So,
right.
I mean, we do talk. It really, though, this playoffs, the more we talk, it hasn't really come down to how. I mean, Memphis would have got hurt. Again, you could argue. You think it would have that they would have beat Golden State. I don't think so. You could argue how played a little bit into that series. But really, outside of that, maybe Philly a little bit. But I mean, they had an opportunity in Game 6 and couldn't close the door. So, but I mean, if you really want to know how valuable Luka Doncic is to the Mavericks, just ask Mark Cuban because he'd rather have Luka Doncic than be married. I don't know if you saw that.
But let me. What seed was were the Heat?
So the Heat were the 1, Boston was the 2.
Okay, I just wanted to...
Golden State was the 3, Dallas was the 4. And I'm going to make this point because I repeatedly said, remember when in January, February, the Cavs were on top of the world? They were close to being that number 1 seed. I said, sitting here on this podcast every week, I said, I don't care what seed you are. Go look at the statistics of the NBA. If you are not a top 3 seed in the NBA, do you rarely make the finals, let alone the conference? Dallas is obviously an exception this year.
Was it 3? I thought you said top 4.
No, it is top 3. 4 has been very rare. 4 has been the 2018 Cavs, Dallas obviously this year, and a couple other teams, but it hasn't really been 4 a lot. There's only been one team in history that has won the championship from being the 4th seed, and that was the Celtics with Bill Russell.
Okay.
There's only been one other team that has won the title not being a top 4 seed at all, which is the 6th seed Houston Rockets in '95 when Hakeem Olajuwon was hurt during most of that regular season. So when you look at it, if you're not a top 3 seed, your chance of winning the championship are dramatically decreased. And again, give all the credit to the world to Luka Doncic and Dallas, who they said on the broadcast Sunday night, and I did not know this, after January 1st, the Dallas Mavericks have the 2nd best record in the NBA, right behind the Phoenix Suns.
Yep. Brandon, I can't wait to talk more playoffs with you next week, more Cavs. We'll see what the future holds. We might have a special guest for everyone as well. So while you're still white hot, Brandon, there's only one thing left to do.
Don't forget to let us know, and we'll see you guys.